Howdy folks and friends, welcome back to another video. Today we are returning to the Wattpad fanfiction, My First Gryffindor Love Year 1. If you didn't watch the first part, that is an hour long, either pause here, go listen on 2-speed, get caught up, or if you like to be an agent of chaos, such as myself, jump right in here and be lost in all the confusion, because honestly, I've read it all, and I'm still confused. I will give a brief summary for any of those of you who do choose to just stick around so you're not completely lost. Here's what we know so far. In this fic, we follow Evana Malone. It's Ivana's first year at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and she is quite an interesting character, to say the least. I can sum her up in just a few short characteristics. 1. When she doesn't know what to say or do or how to advance the plot, Evana likes to sit in silence. 2. She claims that Chloe, the other self-insert character, is her bestie, but then acts the exact opposite way in every situation possible. 3. Evana appears to have a weird encyclopedic amount of knowledge on most of the Harry Potter characters, specifically those that already come from wizarding families. I joked in the first video how it felt like Evana was quizzed at breakfast about who everybody was and all their business, and I still believe that to some degree. And 4, Ivana's probably autistic. Our story really picks up when Evana lays eyes on Seamus Finnegan during the sorting ceremony. And the first 7 chapters of this entire fic are dedicated to them just learning who each other is, going to classes. It's honestly really fucking boring. A lot of the plot is also just the Sorcerer's Stone with Evana and Chloe wedged in with all their personal drama. So it's about as fulfilling of a reading experience as I can imagine a vomit-flavored Bertie Bott's Every Flavored Bean is. It sometimes comes off as the author really wanting us to know as the reader that they know the Harry Potter world inside and out, but doesn't do very much for the actual storytelling aspect of this fanfiction. Again, go listen to part 1 if you want a more comprehensive overview of all the bullshit that happens. You cannot pay me enough or sponsor me enough to go through it here. Anyway, let's get back into our own personal hell. Chapter 8 picks up right where we left off with Evana confessing her crush to Seamus. Seamus stares at me, the snow being the only thing moving around the two of us. He looks at me, staring into my eyes. We don't break our stare for what seems like forever. Evana tries to get Seamus to say something, but instead all he does is just whisper her name and then walk away. Evana starts to cry as Seamus walks away towards the castle. She ends up running past him, sobbing uncontrollably, and even runs past Fred and George, which is really just to make us realize just how inconsolable she is. Because if you didn't watch the first video, she and Fred and George are weird besties because they interacted on the train once. Evana ends up running up to her dorm and crawls into bed. When I got to this point, I expected either a Bella Swan after Edward left type montage, or for Evana just to stare off into space until something relevant to the plot happened. But instead, we're thrown for a fucking loop because we get a POV change. We switch to Chloe's point of view, and she's down in the Great Hall. She sees Seamus return from being outside with Evana, because remember, we left off, they were outside having this whole confessional. That's why Seamus is walking back into the building. And Chloe makes a note that Ivana's not with him, which is weird. Chloe asks him about where Evana is, and he just says, I don't know, and then stands up and walks away. So he's at the table for 10 seconds. Chloe then asks Hermione what she thinks is going on, but isn't exactly helpful. Chloe spends a lot of her time in the Great Hall finishing lunch, I think, or breakfast, whatever. I don't know. I don't really care. But she spends it thinking about what happened in various different ways and only really stops this long rambling thought process when Dean stands up and tries to leave. They go off together and Chloe asks Dean what he thinks is the issue, but he's more worried about finding out where Seamus has gone off to, because again, Seamus sat at the table and then walked away. They decide to go to the library first, but they spend all of a sentence there, realizing that neither Evana nor Seamus is present, so they just leave and go to the dorms, which honestly they should have tried the first time. Dean suggests that they go to their respective dorms and then meet back in the common room if they don't find anything or with any updates. And of course, Chloe goes up and finds Evana covered in her bed. Evana tells Chloe to leave her alone. Chloe notes a casual, I've been crying, but I'm not going to admit that I've been crying type voice coming from Evana under the covers, so she just takes that as her cue to leave. Because Chloe is 11 years old and ill-equipped to handle the hormonal typhoon that Evana is going through, she just dips, leaves her friend to cry, and then when she gets back downstairs, she tells Dean what she found. Dean and Chloe end up just going to look for Seamus and decide to go back outside to find him. When they're out there, they actually see the spot where Evana laid down before confessing her crush on Seamus, and then see some tracks like leading away from it, which confuses me because Seamus left Evana. So there should have been a track. So let me picture this. So the two of them were like over here having their little confessional. They both walked into the castle. Evana went up to the dorm. Seamus walked back outside. And then they note that there are tracks leading to the Quidditch pitch from where it happened. So did Seamus revisit the site and then freak out himself and go to the Quidditch pitch? I don't understand. Anyway, they wander into the empty stands and they see Seamus sitting alone. And Chloe gets this bright idea, probably because she hangs out around Evana too much and is very self-centered, potentially like Evana is. Chloe suggests that just she go over to talk to Seamus because if they both go over, he might feel overwhelmed. Personally, and this is just personal preference, if I was having conflict with a girl I liked or a girl who liked me, I wouldn't want that person's best friend coming and talking to me. I'd want to talk to my own best friend. So why Dean doesn't stand his ground and be like, no, let me go talk to Seamus. We live in the same fucking dorm. I don't know. Anyway, Chloe approaches Seamus and asks him what happened and tells him that she found Evana in their dorm crying, so something must have like gone down when they were outside. All Seamus does is tell Chloe that he feels terrible, which doesn't give her much to go off of. She pries and pries for a little bit, and then eventually all he gives her is that he walked away from her, and then Chloe just goes, because she doesn't have more to go off of. Seamus then actually goes on to explain that Evana revealed her crush, and he responded by just walking away. He puts it into context. And Chloe is weirdly unfazed by this and just goes like, oh, okay. She then asks why after like a second of giving it more thought. And Seamus, who is clearly still working through like a bunch of emotions that I don't think he's probably equipped to handle, he ends up kind of blowing up at Chloe and just being like, I don't know why I did it. I just did it, whatever. Chloe then has the audacity, while Seamus is having this little freak out, to be like, oh my God, calm down. We don't need the whole school hearing. To which Seamus rightfully tells her that she doesn't get it, in fact, and then goes on for a little bit about how Evana probably hates him now. At one point, he calls himself a git, and it just makes me think of the other times in the story where we've had random blimies thrown in. It really does something to the writing. Eventually, Chloe convinces Seamus to come up to Gryffindor Tower and talk to Evana. I don't know where Chloe suddenly gained these conflict resolution skills, but I digress. Our time in Chloe's shoes ends right around this time, and we're transported back to Ivana's point of view, where she's still laying in bed, and Chloe is now telling her to come downstairs to the common room because Seamus has agreed to talk. But instead of getting excited about this or having a reasonable reaction, Evana just kind of stares at Chloe. It takes Chloe using Ivana's full government name, Miss Evana Malone, to get her out of bed and downstairs. When they get down there, Chloe and Dean sit at a separate table, and Seamus and Evana kind of reconcile. Seamus apologizes. Evana point blankly asks him why he just walked away, which is somewhat fair, I'll give her that. He claims he just didn't know what he wanted to say or how to react, which then prompts Evana to have her own little bit of a breakdown. You could have said, let me go and think this out. I felt like crap and that you hated me. I cried for so long thinking that I was a loser for liking you. I yell at him. He stares at me, waiting for me to go on. And where did you go? Back to the Great Hall with everyone else to act like nothing happened, I say. Seamus, in this moment, rightfully gets a backbone and defends himself that he actually felt terrible about the situation. He tells Evana the truth, that he didn't know what to do, so he went to the Quidditch stands and sulked until Dean and Chloe found him. We then get this extremely toxic moment from Evana, and it kind of solidifies just how shitty of a character she is and how this fanfiction really is a story of the main character can do no wrong no matter how poorly they treat everyone around them. Because Evana says this, I bet you didn't cry. I smirk. Like, how fucked up is that? And she smirks? To me, this says that Evana knows this is not an okay thing to do. She realizes that this is going to elicit a certain response out of Seamus, and that's what she's going for. She's aiming for the jugular with this one. Again, Evana, grade A homegrown bitch. I don't like her as a person, but we must read on. Seamus doesn't see this for the red flag that it is, either because he's 11 or because if he did, we would not have a fanfiction to continue reading, and instead just pours his heart and soul out for her. I did though. Evana, I'm sorry. I just haven't ever had a girl like me before, and I didn't, and I still don't know how to act. It's just the thought that someone has feelings for you make you think, and boy, have I thought. You know what I've been thinking about? I've been thinking that we're great friends and that you liking me isn't a big surprise. I like you too, but I think it's a little early for anything to happen. I mean, we're only 11. It's really young and kind of immature, Seamus says, and I look into his eyes. At this moment, I thought we'd get a little bit of clarity. We'd have a little, like, maybe a little hug or something. We've had some of those, but no. Evana doubles down and says this. All right, tell you what, I forgive you, but don't forget that I will hold this over your head for a long time. And you have to make it up to me. I don't care how or when, just do it. Got it? This comes after the fact that Evana has acknowledged in her head that she believes Seamus and thinks he is telling the truth. She also, in her own internal monologue, points out that they're also very young and says that she's at least agrees with his views on that note. However, Evana lets Seamus off the hook, where he does a whole like, yes, Evana, and then her anger leaves. That's literally what it says. They hug, like any toxic situationship would. And when they pull back from this deep embrace, Evana notes that in Seamus's eyes, she sees a deep promise in him. They end up going back outside for like the 4th time in one day. Because remember, this is all happening in the span of like an hour, maybe 2 tops. But they go back outside and we get one more cringy internal monologue from Evana. Where do we stand? We stand in a friendship that has meaning. But that meaning will not blossom until we are older and more mature. But right now, we are friends. Strong friends. And that will never change. I wonder how many chapters until that changes. We start our next chapter with a huge time skip that gets us right up to Christmas break. I sort of hope that this means we're done with the setup chapters of like making friends, going to classes, but that remains to be seen. Evana is eating breakfast alone, excited that she's going home for break. Dean joins her for like 0.2 seconds before Evana decides to go back up to Gryffindor Tower to her dorm to either finish packing or just retrieve some items. On her way, she passes by Harry and Ron, just in case you forgot that they're present in this retelling of Sorcerer's Stone. When she gets upstairs, Evana finds Chloe, Hermione, and Seamus. But before she can greet anyone, Evana has to toot her own horn by saying this to herself. For some reason, I feel as if I'm the reason we're all good friends. But recently, Hermione has been spending a lot of time with Harry and Ron, and partially forgetting about Chloe and I. Maybe they're studying a lot, but that's a little far-fetched. I mean, think about it. Ron studying with a group of people? It's like picturing Draco and I in love, which will like never happen. Another example of Evana just being shit to Ron for no good reason. Evana says hi to her 3 classmates and makes a point to hug Seamus. She goes on to tell us that after the argument from the previous chapter, that hugging is a lot more common for them now. Evana also lets us know that other students are starting to pick up on the fact that they hug a lot and are kind of like attached to the hip. But she thinks it's weird that they're giving them looks. Can McGonagall please come teach these kids about PDA and time and place, because I feared no one ever taught them and that's why they're getting these weird fucking looks. Evana finally returns to the Great Hall with the intention of giving everyone a proper goodbye before the train leaves. When she sees her return, Hermione goes to get her stuff or go do something in Gryffindor Tower, leaving Evana a perfect spot to sit at the table. Evana like sits down at the table and is like, I came to say goodbye to anyone who cared. And I thought that was bad enough, but then Dean is like, well, bye. And then Evana reaches across the table to slap him playfully, I have to assume. He then cracks up about this, not seeing why we like Evana. She should be socially shunned far more than she is. Seamus doesn't bat an eyelash at this and instead just gestures for Evana and him to go spend some time outside before the train leaves. Once they're outside, Seamus tells Evana how much he's gonna miss her. She's like, yeah, that makes sense, but also like you won't be alone because Dean and Harry and Ron are all staying. But then he's like, but I just want to spend time with you. And it's like, yeah, no shit. That's all you've done this entire time. Go have some boys time, please. Go be one of the guys for like a week. They don't get too much further into this conversation because Hermione ends up coming outside. They have a whole long exchange about how Ivana's not wearing a jacket. Again, we have to remember that she's just built different and loves the cold. They wait in silence until Chloe joins them. They're about to leave, Seamus gets one more hug in, and then they're off to the Hogwarts Express to go back to London. Most of the train ride, honestly, is really boring. I wrote notes about it, but as I read over them, it can really be boiled down to this. Evana reads a book. It's boring, but she finishes it. Sitting in silence. Can't say I'm very surprised. Sorry, they sit in silence twice, so add another one to that tally. Once they get off the train, Ivana's parents greet her. She addresses her mom as mother with a capital M, and her dad affectionately calls her kiddo. So at this point, I'm kind of hoping we get some like family dynamic info. Like we get to see what Ivana's like outside of school when she's around her parents. At one point, Ivana says that she's hungry, and so Mr. Malone invites the Harrises with them out to lunch. They go to a pub and then they go home. This lasts literally all of a paragraph. Once we're home, we get some information about Ivana, but it's really just what she does to kill time. She listens to some music. She goes to the family library. We learn that it's literally the Beauty and the Beast library with 2 floors. So Ivana's rich, apparently, which I guess we should have assumed, but Ivana ends up getting bored perusing her family library and decides to go outside and fly on the broomstick, which freaks out her dad. She does some demonstrations. Her mother ends up coming outside and offering her snacks and lemonade, and it's like a cute little moment. It's not that bad. When it's evening and it's finally time for her to come inside, either for dinner or just for like the evening, I guess, Ivana specifically compares the house to Malfoy Manor, which is where we learn that she's actually been there because Lucius invited the Malones over for dinner one night. And I guess that also explains how she knew Draco just by looking at him. I feel like we could have had more interaction between the two if they're supposed to have known each other. Maybe this could have been a story of like, oh, the well-to-do witch with fancy family knows the Malfoys, but she really likes this half-blood boy and her parents want her to be with a pureblood, and it could have been a whole fucking story about that. But no, we just get vague references to the fact that, again, Evana fucking knows everybody. Luckily, we get to skip a lot of holiday break and move our way right up to the day before they go back, which happens to be Ivana's birthday. She wakes up to a fresh breakfast from her mother and then opens a present, and it's books, which Ivana actually appreciates. Ivana goes and gets dressed because the Harrises are coming over to help celebrate. Ivana at one point complains about how whenever the people come over, even the Harrises, specifically the Harrises, Ivana finds it weird that they have to dress up in like decent clothing because it's just the family friends and just the girls hanging out, but whatever. When the Harrises finally arrive, Chloe and Ivana go off to do their own thing. They talk about Hogwarts, how they're excited to go back, typical conversations. At one point they eat lunch and then the girls go back away to doing their own thing while the adults schmooze and talk and do whatever it is that adults do. But they do this up until it's time to open presents for Ivana's birthday. And it's unclear who sent the presents because Ivana already got her present from her parents. And then the Harrises came over and they assumingly brought a present, maybe 2, probably just 1 because Ivana's parents only got her 1. But then we're sat through a whole scene where she opens multiple presents. So did other Malones send presents? Did the Harrises just shower Ivana with gifts? Did her parents get her more and they just had her open the 1 in the morning? She ends up getting a bunch of things. Her favorite is a red and gold necklace with lots of gems, presumably meant to be like a shout out to the fact that she's a Gryffindor. We get to chapter 10 and they're back on the Hogwarts Express, and Ivana is actually talking to Hermione about her break. And they talk about the books that Ivana just got, and it's actually kind of cute. They have a little bonding moment. Hermione's like, oh, tell me more. And Ivana is like telling her about the books a little bit. And then Hermione's like, can I borrow them when you're done with them? And it's like, it's actually kind of cute. They have an actual like genuine bonding moment over something that they clearly both are passionate about. So I liked that part. Don't have much to say about it. They get back to Hogwarts. Everyone's excited for them to return. Obviously, Seamus is like the #1 most excited. Ivana's not worried about getting her luggage. In fact, she's more worried about getting lunch, to which she bolts to the Great Hall upon hearing that it's also sandwiches. Either this world, they only eat sandwiches, or the author could not be bothered to come up with more than one fucking meal other than sandwiches and chicken. Ivana runs to the Great Hall. She eats. She ends up telling Seamus that she's so excited about this because they don't get to eat this sort of stuff at home, which is weird because they just had sandwiches on her birthday the day before. Maybe these are like bad for you sandwiches and Ivana's only allowed to eat like fancy sandwiches at home. It doesn't ever say what's on them. We don't get that much detail. It's just sandwiches and chips. A lot of sandwiches, a lot of chips. Ivana mentions to Seamus that the day before was her birthday. He stops eating to hug her across the table, because again, we know no social bounds. When Seamus says happy birthday, that prompts Dean and Harry and Ron to also say happy birthday to Ivana. Dean hugs Ivana, which makes sense. Harry pats her shoulder. Guess they're not on hugging terms yet. But her interaction with Ron is really funny and kind of shows just how like little Evana gives a shit because they just shake hands. Fred and George come over and they hug her, but she and Ron shake hands because we can't be getting too familiar with the younger of the Weasley boys. We have to be friends with the twins for some reason. Seamus tells Evana about his Christmas. He tells her about this little lion statue that he got, and it's really cute. It's supposed to also be like covered in gems and all Gryffindor-y. Evana goes to unpack for a little bit. Chloe teases her. It's weird, and then Evana goes back downstairs. When Evana gets downstairs to the common room, Seamus is sitting at a table drawing in a notebook, seemingly inspired by one of her favorite pastimes. They end up going outside again after a while because where else do we go in this story besides outside into the Great Hall? And despite the fact that we have spent numerous paragraphs and a number of chapters talking about how Evana is not affected by the cold, she ends up shivering. And this is oh so convenient because Seamus gives her his scarf. Evana, though, continues to complain about how cold she is, specifically her fingers, and I thought for a brief moment we were going to get some hand-holding. But no. Can't be doing that when I expect it. Instead, Dean, Harry, and Ron creep up on them and give them a little startle. This weird moment happens where they all end up going inside because I guess, like, Dean and Harry fell in the snow laughing so hard, so they all decide to just go inside and warm up by the fire. Evana and Seamus sit by each other, and this is what transpires. I have no other way to sum it up. It just, you got to hear it word for word. I look into the fire and watch the logs burn. Seamus gets up and stands in front of me, blocking my view. What? I ask, confused. Then he grabs my wrist and pulls me into a hug. The best one we have shared yet. He holds me close, and I put my head on his shoulder. Seamus tells her that he missed her a lot. She's like, why? He's like, I just did. And she's like, why did you miss me? Why are you always so sweet to me? As if that's not like the whole ultimate goal of having a crush is for them to also like you back and do nice things. When they pull apart from their embrace, they lock eyes for a moment, and Evana has a feeling, just like a little inkling that maybe he wanted to kiss her. Evana is in the Great Hall, and Chloe joins her. Evana is all wrapped up in her thoughts about Seamus maybe wanting to kiss her, and Chloe tries, like any normal friend would in this instance, to get Evana to talk about what's got her all in her mind palace.
Get out.
What?
Get out. I need to go to my mind palace.
Evana snaps at her, again, fully solidifying that she's just a shitty character, and so they sit in silence for a bit while we get another internal monologue. Was he going to kiss me? What would I do if he actually had? I sigh and ponder that question for a long time. What would I have done? Would I have kissed him back? Would I have just been in so much shock that I would have pulled back? I breathe deeply in wonder. For a long time, I just think. My mind floats around having me think of other questions and answers for them. Then pictures and memories come. The most frequent one is of Seamus, looking into my eyes the moment he would have kissed me, then him pulling away. It becomes so frequent that I open my eyes and see the bright white sky. Seamus, of course, is standing right over Evana. Like he didn't also just walk away from her. That confuses me for a bit, but whatever. He asks her why she's laying in the snow, and then he ends up just joining her. Eventually, Seamus's hand kind of creeps over to Ivana's, and they look at each other. They laugh, and they lay there in the snow for a while. Seamus's hand makes his way into Ivana's. She knows that his smile is perfect, not a tooth out of place. At one point, Evana finally experiences the sensation of being cold, and so Seamus tries to, like, cuddle her to keep her warm while they're laying in the snow. Eventually, Evana gets a single coherent brain cell and mentions that people can probably see them cuddling and might think it's a bit weird, so he suggests that they just go inside. They stop at Gryffindor Tower so that Evana can change out of her sweater, and then they decide to go up to the Astronomy Tower area because it's less populated, I guess. When they're up there, they end up holding hands for a while as they walk around looking for a spot to hang out. There's a lot of talk of them just looking at each other and smiling and laughing for no real reason. And then, because we can't go more than a few seconds without bombarding our reader with a lethal dose of cringe, we get this harrowing scene. I feel like one of the older kids sneaking around the castle to be with a boy. I smile and laugh at the thought. What? Seamus asks. Oh, nothing. I just thought of something funny. Can I hear? Oh, it's just that I don't feel like a first year sneaking around, trying to find a quiet place with no people. With you. I tone my voice down at the last part, and he pulls me into his lap. Why are we sitting on each other's laps? Like, I can only pray to whatever holy beings hear me that we stop.
It's time to stop!
This doesn't last long, though, praise the gods, because Seamus and Evana hear footsteps approaching. They hide, only to realize that it's Chloe and Dean coming to look for them, worried about where their friends are. At one point, one of them suggests that they go tell McGonagall that Evana and Seamus are missing, but that doesn't last for very long. They decide just to go back to the common room. Once Dean and Chloe are out of range, Evana and Seamus go back to sitting together. No lap sitting, luckily, but they do hold hands and put heads on each other's shoulders, which, not that bad. I can take that. Evana complains about being tired and starts to fall asleep at one point. Seamus lets her nap, and then when Evana wakes up from her little nap, she and Seamus are about to kiss again, but they get disrupted for another time by more people coming over. This time, it's just Draco, Crabbe, and Goyle messing around, and so they wait it out and decide we should probably go back to where people might actually find us. When they get back to the Gryffindor common room, they are bombarded by Dean and Chloe, and they want to know where they've been. Evana very cheekily is like, oh, we were in the castle. And Chloe's like, yeah, no shit, we looked everywhere. Where specifically were you? Evana's like, oh, we were near the astronomy tower. And Chloe goes, huh, weird, we went over there. And Ivana's like, maybe you should have looked harder. Chloe keeps trying to pry and be like, just tell me where you were. It can't be that serious. And Ivana's like, no, I don't want to because I said so, whatever. Evana ends up getting so upset that she kind of screams at Chloe to leave her alone about this, and no one calls her out for it. Evana storms away. Seamus follows her. What can you expect? He asks her what that was all about, and Ivana's like, I don't want to admit to my best friend that we kind of have a thing going. Because she's worried that Chloe's gonna go like blabbing to people, I guess. And instead of trying to reason with her and like help her get out of her little paranoid thought bubble, Seamus just hugs her again because she's freaking out. We have to dole out the hugs to keep her calm. At one point, he like pets her hair and the moment builds and then they kiss. It's really anticlimactic, actually. I honestly expected it to be way more of a buildup and way more romantic for how long we've been putting it off, but it just kind of like happens. They break apart. Ivana's like, oh my gosh, I didn't think that would happen so soon. And Seamus is like, yeah, well, I figured you needed to calm down, and that's all I could think of.
What?
Anyway, after finally having their first kiss, Evana and Seamus finish their second one because they decide to kiss again and then go back to the common room. And Evana apologizes and lies and says that she was tired and that's why she snapped at Chloe. And she just kind of accepts it and promises to bring Evana some food because it's dinner time and Ivana's gonna go to bed. I don't know. She ends up thinking about her crush and kissing him as she falls asleep. 3 weeks have passed. Things are getting better for Seamus and Evana. More and more every day. They don't sneak around as much, but they still don't like show PDA in front of their friends or tell anyone really what's going on. But I don't know. You're 11. Maybe like do your homework. Do your worksheets. We know that Hogwarts teachers in this world give them worksheets. So do your worksheets. Chloe continues to try to ask Evana what's going on. She continues to deflect. Evana at one point even mentions that professors are starting to notice that she and Seamus kind of go MIA for a bit and are like attached at the hip. But Evana like clarifies they don't skip classes to be together, so I guess that expunges them of all problems. Winter also is coming to the end and snow is starting to melt. We get 2 sentences establishing that Harry, Ron, and Hermione are spending a lot of time together because remember, this is still a Harry Potter story and the original plot is still going on in the background. We're also told that Dean and Chloe are hanging out a lot more, mostly because they're just trying to chase after Seamus and Evana. One morning, they're all in the Great Hall. Nothing really exciting goes on, but Seamus and Evana decide to go out to the Quidditch pitch to hang out, just the 2 of them. There's more lap sitting.
It's time to stop!
And Evana mentions that she didn't think that she'd have a boyfriend around this age and that she expected to get one more around the age of 13, which I'm just so tired. I'm so tired of this nonsense. I really didn't even need to make a part 2. I could have just said, the story ends and it's shit. At one point, Evana asks Seamus if he loves her, and he's like, yeah. And then this leads Evana to being like, am I your girlfriend? And then he like formally proposes that they be boyfriend and girlfriend officially. He like stands up and does a whole thing. I don't know. They're hugging. I'm gonna vomit. And then they get a sense that someone's nearby. It's revealed like 2 sentences later that it's Fred and George doing something. This all happens literally so that when they go inside later, Fred and George can be like, we thought we saw you 2. And they're like, yeah, it's us. Seamus at one point mentions how much he doesn't love the idea of them having to sneak around and keeping like their relationship a secret for forever. And Evana, she kind of agrees that she feels the same way, but also she still wants to keep it a secret. Guess how long that lasts. Type in the comments, how long do you think it lasts that they don't tell a lot of people? The answer is 16 sentences. Fred and George go into the common room because they actually saw that it was Evana and Seamus, and they single them out. And then George is like, I sense some love is in the air, and asks if there's like a new romance blossoming. Seamus immediately jumps on the moment and is just like, yep, that was us. That's a thing. And this makes Evana groan, but right before this all happened, Seamus made it very clear to her, if someone confronts us, I'm going to tell the truth. I'm not going to lie and try to hide it. So she groans as if he did not exactly just say what he was going to do and then followed through on that. So she has no right to be surprised or upset or annoyed. Fred and George, of course, don't mind hearing this information. They think it's kind of cute. Once Fred and George leave, Evana turns to Seamus and is like, why did you tell them? I said I didn't want people to know. And he doesn't really answer. He just hugs her, which I guess is enough because then they just sit in silence for a while until Evana decides to go to her dorm. Chloe is up there and confronts Evana about Seamus yet again because she really just is nosy and wants to know, which I think is honestly fair. If my best friend kept disappearing with a boy and then was being really cagey about it, I would probably continue to pry a little bit because I'd want to make sure that we're being safe and smart and not getting hurt or being like really stupid. But Evana, of course, doesn't like this and tries to deflect every single thing that Chloe asks with a smart-ass answer. Where do the two of you always disappear to? Mostly outside, sometimes the hallways. What do you do? Talk. About what? School and stuff like that. Why can't you just do that in the common room? Change of scenery. Chloe finally pieces things together and says that after the astronomy tower incident, Evana had mentioned that she and Dean should have looked harder, and that's kind of what helped her piece things together, that they were in fact up there and they were intentionally hiding. Evana finally acknowledges that the jig is up and acknowledges that she should probably tell her best friend the truth and that it is her best friend, so she finally deserves to know. Chloe is, of course, thrilled and very supportive. Lovely, like a good friend should be. And she, of course, asks a few annoying questions that Evana wanted to avoid, but it's fine. Chloe's a literal saint, absolves Evana of all her lying and secrecy, and says that her secret's safe and that she won't tell anyone until Evana gives permission for Chloe to spread the hot goss. We've reached chapter 13 and I can taste freedom, just a hint of it. I'm getting so excited because I get to eat dinner after this and I'm so hungry I'm starting to shake because I forgot to eat today. We pick up our story later. Ivana's actually doing some studying for once, something we have never seen in our entirety of this book. Apparently, it's also supposed to be like a week away from exams. Evana makes it very, very clear that she hates studying, but her parents will ground her for the summer if she doesn't get good grades. And that's the only reason why she's putting in all this work to do well. At one point, Chloe pops over to try and like talk to Evana and then ends up teasing her that she's actually studying. And then, because she's actually not that horrible of a person, catches a clue and leaves Evana alone. I figured at one point we would get like a lock-in type monologue of Evana super focused and we get some more info about her home life, but I don't think we're ever going to get that. Evana at one point gets pissed and like stressed out from studying, so she throws the book in the air that she's using and it hits Seamus, I guess. He tries to brush it off and she has like some social awareness for like a few seconds and is like, no, I just hit you with a book. But he's still fine with it, so I guess he's just used to her throwing things and hitting people that it isn't a problem. Evana continues to study. Seamus kind of hangs out with her, but she gets super upset and then he suggests that they just like take a break and go on a walk. When they're in super populated hallways, they're in friend mode. They don't hold hands or do anything cringy. And then when they get into less busy areas, they kiss and hold hands. We get another paragraph about how Evana still doesn't want people to know, mostly because she doesn't want to become the center of attention, but all of her actions seem to say otherwise. So I don't know. What's the real story, Evana? Do you want to be center of attention and the adoring one that everyone likes, or do you want to be left to the shadows to do your own thing and read and write and slap people? Later on, they're in the common room. Ivana's doing more studying. Seamus is hanging out. He draws a picture of her and it's kind of funny. She hits him with the book and he's fine with this. They go to the Great Hall for a snack at one point. They see Chloe. Chloe asks the young couple how they're doing and Seamus is confused. Again, there was a whole time skip, but I guess Seamus didn't get the memo that Ivana told Chloe, or Chloe never hinted at it to Seamus. I don't know. They have to clarify it. Maybe the author didn't even remember that they wrote it that way. Seamus tries to have a backbone again by saying to Ivana, but you said you didn't want people to know. And Ivana's like, well, she's my best friend. She can know. Seamus, though, sees nothing wrong with this. Go figure. And then they have sandwiches and chips and lemonade. Again, I don't know with the sandwiches. Go off, I guess. I hope that there are different sandwiches every day. The three of them end up going down to the lake at some points. I think they hug and Chloe's like, oh my God, and like actually acts like a fucking middle schooler for once. In the next breath, it's also dinner time. At dinner, Dean finally learns the truth about this very cringy couple. The way that they tell Dean is that Seamus says to him, what would you say if I had a girlfriend? And he's like, I'd say you're dreaming, Seamus. And he's like, well, I do. And Seamus is like, who? As if it's not obvious. Seamus points to Chloe. Dean says, blimey, kill me now. We get a weird time skip at the end of this chapter. It's literally like 2 lines of asterisks and then the final paragraph. Exams are done after this little time skip and Ivana feels like she's failed. She gives us way too many details about what each exam is like and then says how much she wants to win the House Cup and how she's excited for the end of term feast. Chapter 14, Hermione wakes everyone up at like 3 a.m., presumably coming back from the whole fluffy chess, Ron passing out, Harry fighting Quirrell thing. But that confuses Ivana because Hermione's fully dressed and it's 3 a.m. So Hermione plays it off as like a long story and then Ivana's like, lol, I don't need sleep, spill the fucking tea. Hermione lays it all out for Ivana because I guess we're just telling all the secrets. Ivana ends up just taking all this in and going like, wow, sounds like an adventure. We immediately go to her later at more reasonable time, going down to breakfast and eating bacon. Chloe comes down. There's a lot of talk about being tired. Dry ass conversations ensue. At some point, Ivana goes back up to the dorm to pack, throwing things around haphazardly. Chloe comes up to see her progress. And then this drags on. A lot of this final, like, full chapter is dedicated to them packing and getting ready to go. Finally, Ivana falls asleep. Chloe wakes her up in time for the feast. And they hurry to get some seats and save space for all their friends so that they can come down at their own leisure. Seamus, when he gets down there, sits with Ivana. And they call out together that it's their last meal together and are kind of, like, sappy about it. Dumbledore addresses the student body. They dig into the meal. There's more chicken because I guess all we eat is chicken and sandwiches. The kids do this weird thing where they all kind of reminisce about plot points, like when Seamus blew up the first potion and Ivana got detention. It comes time to award the House Cup. We're blessed with a few chunks of dialogue again, ripped right from the film. If you didn't watch the first video, a lot of the early chapters are just reused dialogue from the movie. Gryffindor wins the House Cup. Everyone cheers. There's a frenzy of excitement for a while, and then everyone heads up to their dorms, but not before Ivana and Seamus can pull off to the side and kiss one last time, because of course. And then it's the epilogue. They go downstairs. It's an emotion fest in the Great Hall. When Seamus comes down, he and Ivana hug a bunch. She makes him promise to write, and he's like, literally, lol, why wouldn't I? Ivana and Harry hug goodbye. She and Ron shake hands. Again, can't be getting too formal, but I do believe she goes and hugs his brothers. I made a bunch of notes about their trip back on the Hogwarts Express to London. And frankly, guys, I don't have it in me to describe what happens because it's so stupid it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters at the end of this is that Seamus gives Ivana the lion statue that he got for the holidays. And she's like, really? And he's like, yeah, take it. I want you to have something to remember me by. As if they're not about to write letters. I don't know what I would do if my crush at that age tried to give me something really expensive and valuable. And Ivana even actually at one point calls out, like, won't your parents notice that you don't have it? What are they going to say? And he's like, I'll figure out something. Just take it, please. Whatever, man. Literally whatever. I'm done. Fuck this story. Hallelujah. But now I guess is the moment you've all been waiting for. How did I, Lily Knives, find this terrible, terrible fan fiction? Well, it's because I wrote it. That's right. I wrote this when I was between the ages of 11 to 14. And I will say that I wrote it in the course of like 3 or 4 weeks, maybe even less. But yeah, I've been wanting to revisit a lot of my old fan fictions. I find them really funny when I read them. At one point, I do know, and I can say that I had an entire like plot and story arc planned out for all 7 years, including the Wizarding War and everything for Seamus and Evana, but obviously I never got past book 1. I think I started book 2 and never finished it. Never will. It can stay a relic of the past. I wrote a lot of fan fictions back in the day. If you want me to go back and read other ones, let me know. I'm willing to go back. If you want me to do other book reviews or even movie reviews, I've always loved watching videos like that. I want to try my hand at it. Maybe comment some suggestions below and I'll see if I can come up with another video. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, why don't you stab the like button, stab the subscribe button. Have a nice day, be safe, make good choices, sit in silence until the next one. Adios!